The wrench slipped from David's hand and clattered against the metal floor. He wiped sweat from his forehead and stared at the tangle of pipes above him. 3 hours into his shift, and the cooling system still refused to cooperate. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, creating an annoying rhythm that matched his growing headache. He bent down to retrieve his tool when he heard it. Small hiccuping sound, crying David. Fro, this section of Gateway Station Meridian was supposed to be empty during maintenance hours. He grabbed his flashlight and swept the beam across the corridor. Nothing. Another sob echoed from behind a stack of supply crates. "Hello," David called out softly. Silence, then a tiny voice spoke in broken standard galactic. "Go away." David moved slowly around the crates. His light found a small figure huddled against the wall. A dragon hatchling, no bigger than a large dog, sat with wings wrapped around itself. The scales were deep blue with silver edges that caught the light. 2 golden eyes glared at him through tears. "Hey there," David said, lowering himself to sit on the floor. Several feet away, he placed a flashlight between them, pointing up so would not blind the little one. "You okay?" the hatchling sniffled. "You are human, guilty as charged. Name's David." "What's yours, Pip?" The small dragon shifted, and David saw what he clutched in his claws. A wooden toy spacecraft, split cleanly in half. "It is broken. I did not mean to break it. I just wanted to play, and I dropped it, and now it is broken forever." Fresh tears rolled down Pip's snout. The sight made David's chest ache. He had a niece back on Earth who cried the same way when her favorite doll lost an arm. "Can I see it?" David held out his hand, palm up. Pip's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Dragons say humans are fragile, soft skins who break like glass. You will drop it too." "Maybe," David admitted, "but I fix things for a living. That's my whole job. I might be able to help." The hatchling considered this. Slowly, carefully, he placed both halves of the toy in David's hands. The wood was old and smooth, worn by years of handling. Someone had carved it with incredible detail. Tiny windows, a name etched in dragon script along the hall. "This was not just any toy. This is beautiful work," David said quietly. He examined the break. "Clean split, no splinters. Who made this for you?" "It was my grandfather's before he went to the Star Sea." Pip's voice became very small. "He made it when he was young. Papa gave it to me, said I should remember that. Even mighty dragons start small." David nodded slowly. He understood the weight of heirlooms. "I think I can fix this, but I need to go get some supplies for my kit. Will you wait here?" Pip nodded. Not trusting his voice, David returned 5 minutes later with a small bottle of wood glue, tiny clamps, and a clean rag. He settled back on the floor and set to work. The hatchling crept closer, watching with enormous eyes. "The trick is patience," David explained as he applied thin lines of glue to both edges. "You have to let things set properly, can't rush it. You talk to it," Pip observed. "To the toy you tell what you're doing like it can hear you." David smiled. "My dad taught me that," he said. "Tools and broken things respond better when you treat them with respect." "Sounds silly, I guess." "No," Pip tilted his head. "Dragons believe objects carry memory, especially old ones. Grandfather's hands touched this wood. His fire warmed it. Maybe it does." "Listen." They sat in comfortable silence while the glue dried. David used the clamps to hold everything in place. After 20 minutes, he carefully removed them and tested the joint solid, but something bothered him. The crack line was still visible, a scar across the toy's hull. One more thing, David said. He pulled out a tiny brush and a small container of paint from his toolkit. With steady hands, he painted a 5-pointed star directly over the crack line, silver paint on dark wood. When it dried, the star looked like it had always been there, a star. Pip breathed like the star. See where grandfather flies like that. Yeah, David handed the repaired toy back. Good as new, maybe better. Pip took the spacecraft with trembling claws. He turned it over and over, testing the repair. Then, without warning, he launched himself at David and wrapped small arms around the human's neck. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Pip whispered. You fixed it. You really fixed it. David patted the small dragon's back awkwardly. You're welcome, buddy. Just be careful with it from now on, okay? Pip pulled back and nodded seriously. I will guard it forever. He spread his wings, preparing to fly. I must go. Papa will worry, but I will not forget the human who helped me. Before David could ask who Papa was or where Pip lived, the hatchling launched into the air and disappeared down the corridor with surprising speed. The sound of wing beats faded into the distance. David sat alone in the maintenance tunnel, surrounded by broken pipes and his scattered tools. He shook his head and smiled. Just another day on the station. He had no idea that several decks above him, security cameras had recorded everything. He had no idea that someone very important was already reviewing that footage with great interest. He picked up his wrench and returned to work, humming softly. The cooling system still needed fixing, and his shift had 3 more hours to go. Somewhere in the station, a small dragon showed his repaired treasure to his papa and talked excitedly about the kind human with gentle hands. Commander Wraith's claws tapped against the armrest of his chair. The rhythm was slow and deliberate, a habit he developed during his years in military service. On the screen before him, security footage played for the third time. A human maintenance worker sat on a dirty floor, carefully repairing a broken toy while a hatchling watched his hatchling. Replay timestamp 1423 to 1445. Wraith commanded. The computer complied. He watched David's hands again. Careful application of glue, the gentle way he spoke to Pip, the painted star, made Wraith's throat tighten. That toy had been carved by his own father 40 years ago, before the border wars, before the long silence of death. Computer pull. Personnel file for David Shun. Maintenance Division. Information flooded the screen. Human, age 32, Earth. Origin, transferred to Gateway Station. Meridian 8 months ago. Engineering degree, 5 years experience on colony ships. Work records showed consistent excellence. Note the disciplinary actions, multiple commendations for going beyond required duties. Wraith leaned forward, reading more carefully. David had stayed late 17 times in the past 2 months, never claiming overtime pay. For different species had filed positive reports about his helpfulness. He had trained 3 interns without being asked. Most interesting was a note from the Quelly's administrator praising David for fixing a translator device for a deaf maintenance worker, doing so on his own time. Pattern recognition. Wraith muttered to himself, this was not random kindness. This was who the human A chime at the door interrupted. His thoughts enter. Pip flew in still, clutching the repaired toy. His eyes were bright with excitement. Papa, Papa. I found him again, the human who fixed grandfather's ship, Wraith's secondary. Eyelids flickered with surprise. You saw him again in Corridor 7 Delta. He was fixing a light panel. I said hello and he remembered me. He asked if the toy was still working good. Pip landed on the edge of Wraith's desk. Papa, why do other species move away when they see me? The human did not move away. He smiled. Because you are a dragon. Hatchling who breathes fire when startled. Wraith thought because most species fear us, but he said none of this. What else did the human do? Wraith asked instead. He was carrying a heavy toolbox. An old Quali's worker was struggling with another box. The human put his down and helped carry the Quelly's box first, even though his own work was waiting. Pip tilted his head. Is this normal for humans? I do not know, Wraith admitted. Humans are still new to the galactic community. We have little information about their social patterns, but he intended to learn more. Over the next week, Wraith changed his patrol routes. It was easy enough to justify. Security chiefs needed to inspect all areas of the station. If his path happened to cross David's work locations, well, that was merely coincidence that he watched from a distance. David worked efficiently but never rushed. When a young intern asked nervous questions, David stopped what he was doing and explained the repair process step by step. When a Valerian engineer snapped at him for working in a shared space, David simply apologized and moved his equipment without complaint. Most revealing was the incident with the ventilation shaft. Wraith had been reviewing maintenance logs in a public terminal when he heard familiar wing beats overhead. Pip loved exploring the station's ductwork, despite being told repeatedly it was dangerous. Wraith was about to call out when David's voice drifted from around the corner. Hey Pip, you stuck again? Maybe a little, came his son's muffled reply. Wraith moved silently to observe. David stood beneath a ventilation grate, looking up at where Pip had wedged himself between two pipes. The human showed no alarm, no frustration. Okay, here's what we're going to do, David said calmly. I'm going to describe the pipe layout from the schematics I have memorized. You're going to back up slowly until you find the turnoff junction, then you can fly down through the vertical shaft. Sound good? What if I am stuck forever? You're not stuck forever, you're just temporarily challenged by geometry. Big difference. Despite his concern, Wraith felt his lips pulled back in what humans would call a smile. Pip giggled from inside the vent. David talked his son through the escape, patient and encouraging. When Pip finally emerged, covered in dust but safe, the hatchling immediately hugged the human. You did not tell Papa I was being foolish. Everyone gets stuck sometimes, David said. Besides, how else do you learn where you fit and where you don't? Just maybe avoid the really narrow sections. Yeah. After Pip flew off, David returned to his original task as if nothing unusual had happened. He did not report the incident, did not seem to expect thanks or recognition. He simply helped because help was needed. Wraith returned to his office with much to consider. In dragon culture, strength was valued. Above all else, hierarchy was maintained. Through displays of power, kindness existed, but it was reserved for family, for those who had proven their worth through combat or achievement. Yet this Humans showed kindness to everyone. Random hatchling, elderly coworkers. Confused interns, there was no calculation in it, no social climbing. David helped because a small dragon was sad. He fixed things because they were broken. He spoke gently because someone needed gentleness that it should have. Seemed weak. By dragon standards, David should have appeared foolish, wasting energy on those who could offer nothing. In return, instead, Wraith found himself respecting the human more than most warriors he had served beside. His computer chimed with incoming reports. 3 more incidents of David going out of his way to assist others. The pattern held. Wraith made a decision. He needed to understand this human better, needed to know if this compassion was genuine or performance. The answer mattered more than he cared to admit. He opened a new file and began making notes. If David was truly as he appeared, such a person was rare in any species, and rare things deserve protection. David knew something was different when Commander Wraith appeared in the maintenance bay. The dragon stood nearly 8 feet tall with scales that shimmered like polished obsidian. Most workers found excuses to leave when security chiefs showed up. David simply nodded politely and continued calibrating the atmospheric sensor in his hands. David Chun Wraith's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Commander David set down the sensor and wiped his hands on his work coveralls. Something I can help you with. The environmental controls in Section 9 require inspection. I need a technician's assessment. David checked his work tablet. Section 9 was not on his schedule, but arguing with the security commander seemed unwise. Sure thing, let me grab my kit. They walked through the station corridors in silence. David noticed other species practically pressing themselves against walls as they passed. He found it odd. Wraith had done nothing threatening. The dragon simply walked with military precision, wings tucked neatly against his back. You are not afraid, Wraith observed. David glanced up. Should I be? Most are. You haven't given me a reason to be afraid. David shrugged. Besides, fear doesn't help fix broken things. Just makes your hands shake. Something that might have been amusement flickered in Wraith's eyes. They reached Section 9. The environmental controls functioned perfectly. David ran diagnostics anyway, professional enough not to question the assignment. While he worked, Wraith watched. You helped my son, the dragon said suddenly. David's hands paused over the control panel. Pieces clicked together in his mind. Pip's formal way of speaking, the security camera blind spots, the hatchling somehow always avoided. Pip is your son? Yes, he's a good kid, curious, smart. David returned to his work. The toy meant a lot to him. It was my father's. Raid's voice carried weight that made David look up again. He carved it before going to war, before he died defending our colony world. David set down his tools completely. I didn't know. If I had realized it was that important, I would have been even more careful. You treated it as important because a child said it was important. You did not need context. You did not need to know its history. Wraith tilted his head. Why? The questions seemed genuine. David considered it. Because Pip was crying, because something he loved was broken. That was enough reason. Most species would have walked past. We have called security to collect a lost hatchling. You sat on a dirty floor and used your break time to help a stranger's child. I guess I did. David felt uncomfortable with the attention. It wasn't a big deal, it was. To Pip it was to me. They stood in silence for a moment. David picked up his diagnostic scanner again, needing something to do with his hands. Wraith continued watching him with those unsettling golden eyes. Over the following days, David noticed the commander appearing in various locations, not following exactly, just present in the cafeteria when David ate lunch, walking past when David helped in turn learn proper safety protocols, standing nearby when David patiently explained to a frustrated Valerian why their repair request would take 3 days instead of 1 that it should have been. Creepy, instead it felt like being studied. Then came the afternoon with a ventilation shaft. David was rerouting power cables when he heard familiar wing beats struggling overhead. He looked up to find Pip wedged between 2 support beams in the ceiling, wings spread awkwardly. "Hey buddy," David called. "Exploring again?" "I am conducting an investigation," Pip said with as much dignity as a stuck child could manage. "There are strange sounds in this duct. Those are probably the coolant pumps. They make a humming noise." David set down his cable cutter. "Want some help getting unstuck?" "I'm not stuck, I am resting." "Right, well if you were stuck, which you're not, you want to fold your left wing closer to your body, then twist a little to the right. That should clear the beam." Pip tried this. His wing caught on a bolt. "Perhaps I'm slightly stuck." David grabbed his stepladder and climbed up, carefully making sure Pip could see his hands at all times. He reached up and gently freed the caught wing membrane. "There you go, easy does it." Pip scrambled out and landed on David's shoulder. The weight made David wobble on the ladder. "Thanks, you are my favorite human." "I'm probably the only human you know well." "Still my favorite." Pip nuzzled against David's cheek. Gesture of dragon affection. "Papa says you are interesting. He watches you work." David stayed himself on the ladder. "I notice he watches lots of people, but he takes notes about you." Pip launched himself into the air. "I think he likes you." "Bye, David." The hatchling vanished down a corridor, leaving David standing on a ladder and processing what he had just learned. Commander Wraith was taking notes about him that was either very good or very bad, and David had no idea which. That he climbed down and returned to his cables. 10 minutes later, a shadow fell across his workspace. "You did not report him," Wraith said. David did not look up. "Report him for being a curious kid. Seems harsh. He was in a restricted area. He was stuck and needed help." David stripped insulation from a wire. "With practiced movements, what was I supposed to do? Leave him there?" "You could have called security, could have. Seemed faster to just fix the problem myself." David finally looked up at the dragon. "Am I in trouble for this?" Wraith was quiet for a long moment. "No, you're not in trouble." The dragon turned and walked away, leaving David more confused than ever. Something was happening, some test he did not understand. He just hoped he was passing it. The alarm cut through the station like a knife. David was halfway through his dinner in the maintenance break room when every screen flashed red. "Emergency code 7. Catastrophic life support failure." That he ran. The emergency operations center was chaos. Technicians from every division crowded around holographic displays showing failing systems. Throughout the station, Director Quellies stood the center, all 4 arms gesturing frantically. Atmospheric. Processors in sections 4 through 12 are offline, someone shouted, cascading. Failure in the mixing chambers, David. Pushed forward, what happened, we don't know, the chief engineer, a massive. Quellies with graying head plates pulled. Up schematics, systems just started. Shutting down 15 minutes ago, we have 3,000 people on this station with dozens of different atmospheric requirements. If we don't fix this in the next 2 hours, people start dying. What do you need me? The engineer highlighted junction deep in the station's core. Main exchange valve here. Something is blocking it. We need someone to get in there and clear it manually. David studied the path. Then he saw the temperature readings. That's running at 300 degrees. 300 and rising. The blockage is causing heat buildup. The engineer's face plates flushed with distress. We're trying to reroute cooling, but nothing is working. I can go, said a voice behind them. Wraith stood in full security armor. Team of Dragon security personnel behind him. Dragons can withstand that temperature. We volunteer. Too big, the engineer said, highlighting the crawl space. Maintenance tunnel is 60 cm wide. Dragons won't fit. David looked at the schematics again. His mind raced through possibilities. I can fit if I use the heat-resistant gear from the 4 division. That gear is rated for dragon fire, not sustained environmental exposure. Wraith objected. You'll be badly burned. Maybe, but I'll be alive long enough to reach the valve. David was already moving toward the equipment lockers. How much time do we have? 90 minutes before oxygen levels become critical in the Valerian quarters. Quellies announced. David, you don't have to do this. David pulled on the thick protective suit designed for working near dragon forges. It was too large, made for bigger species, but it would have to work. Yes, I do. 3,000 lives, director. Someone has to try. Wraith stepped in front of him. This is foolish. Humans are fragile. You could die. I could also succeed. David met the dragon's eyes. You said dragons value strength. This is my strength, not claws or fire, but knowing how things work and being stubborn enough to fix them. Now move. For a moment they stood locked in a silent battle of wills. Then Wraith stepped aside. I will go with you to the access point. They ran through corridors together, David carrying his tools and wearing equipment that made him look like a small walking furnace. Other dragons joined them, forming an escort. At the maintenance tunnel entrance, heat waves visibly distorted the air. David. Wraith's voice was quieter now, almost gentle. Thank you for helping Pip, for being kind to him. Thank him for me too, David said. When this is over, he entered the tunnel. The heat hit him like a physical wall. Even through the protective gear, he felt his skin prickling. Sweat poured down his face. Within seconds, the tunnel was barely wide enough to crawl through. Pipes in, conduits pressing in from all sides. David focused on moving forward. Left hand, right knee, right hand, left knee. The valve was 60 m ahead. His breath came in short gasps. The suit's internal temperature gauge climbed steadily 40 m. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from the heat penetrating the gloves. 20 m. He could see the valve now and something else. Debris wedged against the intake, not random blockage. Deliberately placed. This was sabotage. David said into his communicator. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. Someone wanted this to fail. Wraith's voice crackled back. Can you clear it? Working on it, David reached the valve. The debris was a metal grating, bent and jammed into the mechanism. He pulled out a plasma cutter with hands that barely responded. The heat was incredible now. Parts of his suit were beginning to char. He cut, spars flew, his vision blurred. The grating fell away in pieces. David grabbed the manual override and pulled with everything he had. The valve turned. Somewhere in the walls he heard systems coming back online. Cool air rushed through the tunnel, bringing blessed relief. Atmospheric systems responding, someone said over the comm. Pressure normalizing. David, you did it. David tried to respond, but the words would not come. His hands were screaming with pain. The tunnel spun around him. Strong claws gripped his shoulders. Wraith had somehow squeezed into the tunnel entrance. I have you, human. Stay with me. David felt himself being pulled backward. He wanted to tell Wraith about the sabotage, about the evidence he had seen, but darkness was pulling at him. The last thing he remembered was Pip's voice crying, David, David, wake up. And something cold and wet touching his burned hands. Then nothing. He woke in the medical bay. Pain hit him first, sharp and bright. Then he heard breathing beside him. David turned his head slowly. Pip was curled up on a chair next to the bed, wings wrapped around himself. The repaired toy clutched to his chest. The hatchling was asleep, but his face was streaked with dried tears. Beyond, Pip standing by the window with arms crossed. Wraith watched the stars outside. The dragon's reflection in the glass showed an expression David had never seen before, that it looked like gratitude and something deeper, that it looked like respect. Pain woke David fully. His hands were wrapped in regeneration bandages that hummed softly. With medical technology, he tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Everything hurt. Stay still, you stubborn human, Wraith said, not unkindly. The dragon moved from the window to stand beside the bed. Medical team worked through the night. You had secondary burns on 60% of your hands and forearms. Did we save everyone? David's voice came out as a croak. Yes, atmospheric systems are fully restored. Noise. Wraith poured water into a cup and held it where David could reach it with bandaged hands. You also preserved evidence of the sabotage. Security has already arrested the individuals responsible. David sipped the water carefully. His throat felt like he had swallowed sand. Who would do that? Radical political group. They wanted to cause panic to prove the station was unsafe for Multiesi's cooperation. Wraith's tail swished with anger. They did not care who died. Your quick thinking saved both lives and our investigation. Pip stirred in the chair, golden eyes blinking open when he saw David was awake. The hatchling launched himself onto the bed with a happy cry. Careful, Wraith warned, but Pip had already landed gently on David's chest. You were awake. Papa said you would wake up, but I was worried and I stayed here all night. And the doctor said I should go home, but I did not want to leave you alone. And Pip's words tumbled over each other. Hey, buddy. David managed to smile despite the pain. I am okay. See, still in one piece. You are very damaged. Pieces, Pip said seriously. He touched David's bandaged hand with one careful claw. Papa says you were very brave. He says you did something even dragons would fear. David looked at Wraith. Commander stood with perfect military posture, but something in his expression had changed. The distance was gone. What remained was warmth. I need to tell you something, Wraith said. He pulled a chair closer and sad, a gesture that put him at eye level with David. When you repaired Pip's toy, I did not know what to think. When you continued to help others, I began to watch you. I thought perhaps you were performing, trying to gain favor. I wasn't, David said. I know that now. You helped because help was needed. You showed kindness because kindness costs you nothing but gives others everything. Wraith's claws tapped against his armored leg. In dragon culture, we value strength, power, hierarchy. We teach our young to be fierce, to never show weakness. Pip made a small sound. Wraith pulled his son closer, one wing curving protectively around the hatchling. But watching you, I realized we have forgotten something important. Strength is not only about claws and fire. True strength is choosing to help when you could walk away. True courage is risking yourself for strangers who cannot repay you. David felt his chest tighten with emotion. I just did what felt right. Exactly. You did not think about reward or recognition. You saw a crying child and a broken toy and you fixed it. You saw a scared hatchling stuck in a vent and you helped him down. You saw 3,000 lives at risk and you crawled in a fire. Without hesitation, Wraith leaned forward. David Chun, you have shown my son what it means to be truly strong. You have shown me that compassion is not weakness. Papa cried. Beep whispered loudly. When the doctors were fixing you, he thought I was asleep, but I saw Wraith's scales flushed slightly darker. I thought we might lose you. The thought was unpleasant. David did not know what to say. His hands throbbed, his body ached, but something warm and good was growing in his chest. Something that had nothing to do with burns or medical treatment. The station director wants to give you accommodation, Wraith continued, and a promotion to senior engineering specialist. The pay is significantly better. I appreciate that, but I like my current job. David shifted carefully on the bed. I like fixing things, solving problems. If I become senior specialist, I'll spend more time in meetings than with my tools. Wraith's expression was approving. I told Quellies you would say that. However, I have a different offer, one I hope you will consider. Okay, dragons bond through shared experience and proven loyalty. You have shown both to my family. We would be honored if you would accept our friendship. True friendship, not simply professional courtesy. Pip bounced excitedly. That means you can come to our home and eat with us, and Papa can teach you dragon combat forms, and I can show you my collection of interesting rocks. And Pip Raid's voice was gentle. Let David respond. David looked at them both. The imposing security commander with scales like midnight, the small hatchling with his grandfather's repaired toy, an unlikely friendship, a strange connection across species. It felt right. I would be honored, David said quietly, though I have to warn you, I'm terrible at combat forms. Human flexibility is not great. We will work with what you have, Wraith said, and David could have sworn the dragon was smiling. That a medical technician appeared in the doorway. Commander, I need to change the patient's bandages. We should let you rest. Wraith stood gently, scooping Pip up. We will return tomorrow, and David, thank you for everything. They left. The room felt emptier without them. The technician worked in silence, carefully removing old bandages and applying new ones. Regeneration treatment was working. In a Few days, David's hands would heal completely, leaving barely visible scars, small reminders of the day he crawled in a fire to save strangers, the day he earned the friendship of dragons. David looked out the window at the stars. Beyond, somewhere out there was Earth. His home world. He had come to this station looking for work, for adventure, for something new. He had found family. Instead, 3 weeks after the incident, David returned to work with fresh pink scars on his hands. The marks were already fading thanks to Dragon Medical technology, but they served as conversation starters throughout the station. People David had never met nodded at him in corridors. A Valyrian elder touched his shoulder in passing, a gesture of deep respect in their culture. It was overwhelming. What was more overwhelming was Pip, who had apparently decided that David needed constant supervision. The hatchling appeared at least twice per shift, sometimes to help, mostly to narrate his day in enthusiastic detail, and then Pip said, perched on a tool cabinet while David rewired a control panel, "Papa let me sit in the command chair during the security briefing. I was very professional. I only knocked over one data pad." "Very restrained of you," David said carefully, connecting a blue wire to its terminal. "Papa says I can invite you to family dinner next week. Will you come? Please say yes. Uncle Gareth wants to meet you. He is very big and kind of scary but nice once you know him." David smiled. "I'll come, but Pip, you need to let me work. This panel needs to be online in 20 minutes. I am helping. I am providing moral support. You're providing commentary." That too. A shadow fell across them. Wraith stood in the doorway, arms crossed but expression amused. "Pip, leave David to his work, but pop an owl." Pip sighed dramatically but flew over to land on his father's shoulder. "Humans need more fun in their lives. David works too much." "David works the correct amount," Wraith corrected. "You play too much." "Cool, mate. You have language lessons." After they left, David finished the panel repair in comfortable silence. He was testing the connections when Director Quellis appeared, all four arms holding data pads. "David, a moment of your time." "Of course, Director Quellis." "Set down 3 of the 4 pads. I have been reviewing station operations since the sabotage incident. Your actions save lives, but more than that, your consistent helpfulness has been noted by every department head." David felt his face warm. "I just do my job. You do far more than your job. Which brings me to my proposal." Quellis pulled up a holographic display. "I want to create a new position, interspecies relations coordinator, someone who helps different species understand each other, who solves problems before they become conflicts." "That sounds like a diplomatic position." "It would be. The pay is excellent. You would have your own office, a staff, significant influence on station policy." Quellis paused. "You would also spend very little time actually fixing things." David looked at the display, at the impressive title and salary numbers. Then he looked at his tool belt, worn and familiar and exactly where it should be. "I'm honored, Director." "Really? But I'm a maintenance technician. I like working with my hands. I like solving mechanical problems, not political ones." Quellis made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Commander Wraith said you would refuse. He won your refusal in a wager with me. I owe him a bottle of Terran whiskey now. You bet on what I would say." Wraith insisted he knew you well enough to predict your answer. He was correct. Qualies picked up the data pads. The offer remains open should you change your mind, however I suspect you will. Not after the director left. David returned to his work, but his mind wandered. 3 months ago he had been just another technician, unknown and unremarkable. Now he had friends who happened to be dragons. Now people made bets about his character. His communicator chimed. A message from Wraith. Pip insists on showing you his rock collection tonight. Dinner at 1900 hours. Do not be late. He has been planning the seating arrangement for 3 days. David smiled and sent back a confirmation. He finished the control panel, gathered his tools, and headed toward the next repair on his list. In Corridor 7, he found a young Quellies in turn struggling with a heavy equipment case. Need help? David asked. Oh, you are the human who saved the station. Intern's head plates flushed purple with excitement. I should not bother you with small things. It's not a bother. David grabbed one end of the case. Where are we taking this? They walked together, the intern chattering nervously about her first week on the station. David listened and offered advice when asked. They reached her destination and she thanked him profusely as he walked away. David noticed a dragon security officer watching from a nearby intersection. Not Wraith, but one of his team. The officer nodded with what looked like approval. Before continuing on patrol, word had spread. David realized not just about the emergency, but about everything. Small kindness is noticed, consistent helpfulness recorded. He had not been trying to make a reputation. He had just been himself. Apparently that was enough. That evening David arrived at Wraith's quarters exactly on time. The door opened to reveal a home that was both alien and somehow familiar. Dragon art on the walls, comfortable furniture sized for beings with tails and wings. And in the center of it all, a small wooden spacecraft displayed on a shelf of honor. The repaired toy sat in a beam of soft light. The silver star David had painted gleamed against the dark wood. It looked perfect there, surrounded by other family treasures. You are staring, Wraith observed, handing David a drink. It looks good there, like it belongs. It does, as do you. Wraith gestured to the table where Pip was carefully arranging plates. My son has talked of nothing but this dinner for days. I hope you are prepared for extensive rock-related conversation. I'm ready. They sat together, human and dragons, sharing a meal and stories. Pip showed David rock collection with serious enthusiasm. Wraith told tales of his father, the one who had carved the toys so long ago. David shared stories of Earth, of his own family, of the niece who cried over broken dolls. Later, as David prepared to leave, Pip hugged him tightly. You're my best friend, David. You're pretty great yourself, buddy. Wraith walked David to the door. Thank you for coming, for accepting us. Thank you for letting me in. David walked back through the station toward his own quarters. The corridors hummed with life and activity. Dozens of species living and working together, each with their own needs, their own cultures, their own ways of seeing the universe, and somewhere in all that complexity, a human maintenance technician had found connection by simply being kind, fixing what was broken, by seeing a crying child and choosing to help. The silver star on a wooden toy had been more than decoration. It had been a bridge between worlds, a symbol that small acts of compassion could change everything. David smiled and headed home already, looking forward to the next time Pip would interrupt his work with stories and enthusiasm and requests for help. With stuck wings, some things he thought were absolutely worth being interrupted.